The massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers slid open with a deep rumble that echoed through the crystalline halls of Kepler Prime. Ambassador Jake Morrison stepped through the entrance, his black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast against the shimmering walls that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Behind him walked his aide, Captain Lisa Brooks, her hand resting casually on the datapad that contained humanity's final offer to the galaxy. Jake had been Earth's voice in these chambers for 12 long years. He had watched species after species present their cases to the Council, seen worlds granted full membership rights, witnessed the approval of trade agreements that would make entire civilizations wealthy beyond imagination. But never once had humanity been given the same respect, the same opportunities, the same basic dignity that every other race seemed to take for granted. The amphitheater stretched out before them, like a vast bowl carved from living starlight. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy occupied the tiered seating areas, their forms as diverse as the stars themselves. The jellyfish-like aquatic dolphins floated in their water-filled observation spheres. The crystalline collective beings sparkled like living diamonds under the chamber's artificial sunlight. The towering insectoid hive representatives clicked and buzzed in their section, their compound eyes reflecting the light in patterns that hurt to look at directly, but it was the front rows that commanded attention. There sat the Council's inner circle, the species that truly ruled galactic civilization. Chancellor Vextar of the Zalarian Empire lounged in his ornate chair, his pale blue skin gleaming with the oil that marked his high status. His forearms gestured lazily as he spoke with Hierarch Quindle of the Thraxian worlds, whose serpentine form coiled around a floating platform that kept him at eye level with the other Council leaders. Jake took his position at the speaker's podium, a simple raised platform in the center of the chamber floor. The energy field around him hummed to life, amplifying his voice to reach every corner of the vast space. He looked up at the thousands of beings who would decide humanity's future and felt the weight of 15 billion human souls pressing down on his shoulders. Honored Council members, Jake began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. I stand before you today not just as Earth's ambassador, but as the voice of humanity itself. For 70 years, our species has been a member of this great galactic community. We have followed your laws, contributed to your economies, and shed our blood defending Council worlds from external threats. A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through the Zalarian section. Chancellor Vextar leaned forward in his chair, his four eyes fixed on Jake with obvious amusement. Ambassador Morrison, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never been denied anything he wanted. Your species has indeed contributed much to our civilization. Your people make excellent miners, adequate construction workers, and surprisingly competent mechanics when properly supervised. The words hit Jake like physical blows, but he kept his expression neutral. He had heard variations of these insults for over a decade. Humanity was useful, the Council always said. Humanity was valued for their services. But humanity was never considered an equal. Chancellor Vextar, Jake replied carefully, I respectfully submit that human contributions to this Council extend far beyond manual labor. Our scientists have made breakthrough discoveries in quantum mechanics, stellar engineering, and biotechnology. Our diplomats have successfully mediated 17 interspecies conflicts. Our military forces have participated in 32 peacekeeping missions across the galaxy. Hierarch Quindle's serpentine form shifted on his platform, his scaled head tilting to one side in a gesture that Jake had learned meant contempt. Yes, Ambassador, the Thraxian leader hissed, his words carrying the sibilant quality of his species. Your people are indeed energetic in their efforts to prove themselves worthy. But energy and worthiness are not the same thing. A child may run very fast, but that does not make the child ready to pilot a starship. Jake felt Captain Brooks tense behind him, but he pressed on. This was humanity's last chance to find a place in the galactic community through diplomacy. Honored Hierarch, what I propose today could benefit all Council species. Humanity requests full membership status, with voting rights equal to other major civilizations. In return, we offer complete access to our technological databases, including our advances in faster-than-light communication and our new renewable energy systems. The chamber fell silent for a moment, and Jake allowed himself a brief flicker of hope. Perhaps this time would be different. Perhaps the Council would finally see humanity as more than just a source of cheap labor. Then Chancellor Vexstar began to laugh. It was a sound like grinding metal, harsh and utterly without warmth. Soon other Council members joined in, their various forms of amusement creating a cacophony that filled the great chamber. The insectoids clicked in their buzzing version of laughter. The crystalline beings chimed like broken bells. Even some of the smaller species, those who had no love for the Council's inner circle, seemed amused by humanity's presumption. Full membership, Vexstar said when the laughter finally died down. You wish to sit at the high table with civilizations that have mastered interstellar travel for thousands of years. You speak of your technological advances as if they were gifts the galaxy has been waiting for. Tell me, Ambassador Morrison, what exactly has humanity accomplished that we could not achieve ourselves with a fraction of the effort? Jake felt something cold settle in his chest, but he continued with the presentation he had prepared. Our quantum communication network allows instantaneous contact across galactic distances. Our stellar engineering techniques can extend the life of dying stars by millions of years. Our biotechnology has eliminated genetic diseases in 15 different species. Interesting toys, Hierarch Quindel said with a dismissive wave of one clawed hand. But toys nonetheless. The Council has managed perfectly well without these supposed innovations. We will continue to do so. Furthermore, Chancellor Vexstar added, his voice taking on the tone of someone explaining a simple concept to a slow child, the Council has evaluated humanity's contributions and found them adequate for your current status. You have mining rights on 47 worlds. You have limited trading privileges with approved species. You have the protection of Council law and the benefit of Council technology. What more could a young species reasonably expect? Jake looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at him, and he realized that nothing he said would matter. The Council had made their decision about humanity long ago. They would never see humans as equals, never grant them the respect they deserved, never acknowledge their potential as anything more than a useful servant species. I see, Jake said quietly. He reached into his uniform and pulled out a sealed data crystal, its surface gleaming with an inner light. Then I have one final message to deliver to this Council. He placed the crystal into the podium's reader, and his own voice filled the chamber, speaking words he had hoped never to have to say. The United Terran Federation formally withdraws its request for full Council membership. We thank the Council for the opportunities provided to our species, and we wish you well in your future endeavors. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. This was unprecedented. No species had ever voluntarily stepped back from Council membership. Jake stepped away from the podium as Captain Brooks moved to his side. Is this some sort of negotiation tactic? Ambassador? Chancellor Vexstar demanded, his amusement replaced by suspicion. Jake looked up at the alien leader and smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. No, Chancellor, this is goodbye. As they walked toward the exit, Jake activated his personal communicator and spoke a single word: liberty. Across the galaxy, humanity began to disappear. The mining platform on Titan 7 had been humanity's pride for 15 years. Built into the frozen methane surface of the distant moon, it housed 8,000 human workers and their families. The facility produced rare crystalline compounds that powered half the energy grids in Zalarian space. Every day, massive cargo ships arrived to collect the precious materials that kept an entire sector of the galaxy running smoothly. On the morning of the third day after Ambassador Morrison's speech, the cargo ship Prosperity arrived right on schedule. Captain Zekanol, a veteran Zalarian trader, opened communication channels as his ship approached the docking platform. He expected the usual chatter from human traffic controllers, the familiar voices that had guided him safely to Port Hundreds. of times over the past decade. Instead, he heard nothing but the cold hum of automated systems. Titan 7 Control, this is cargo vessel Prosperity requesting docking clearance, Zekanel said into his communicator. He waited for the cheerful response from Controller Amy Parker, who always had some joke ready about the weather on her frozen world. The silence stretched on until his automated systems took over, guiding his ship to the designated landing pad without any human input. When Zekanel and his crew disembarked, they found the mining platform completely deserted. The massive processing machines still hummed with power. The lights were all functioning normally. The air recycling systems worked perfectly, but there were no humans anywhere to be found. The residential quarters stood empty, with beds made and meals half-finished on kitchen tables. Personal belongings remained exactly where their owners had left them, as if 8,000 people had simply vanished into thin air. In the communication center, Zekanel found a single message playing on an endless loop. The voice belonged to Platform Director Ryan Cole, a man who had worked on Titan 7 since the day it opened. This facility is now operating under automated protocols. All human personnel have been relocated. Please direct future inquiries to Council headquarters on Kepler Prime. The same scene played out across 200 human worlds. On the agricultural colony of New Kansas, Thraxian food distributors arrived to find perfectly maintained farms, with no farmers. The hydroponic gardens continued to grow their crops under automated care, but the 12,000 humans who had lived there for 3 generations were simply gone. On the research station orbiting Proxima Centauri b, crystalline scientists came for their monthly collaboration meeting to discover empty laboratories where human researchers had been working on breakthrough gravitational theories just days before. The pattern was identical everywhere. No signs of struggle, no emergency broadcasts, no distress signals. The humans had left behind their homes, their possessions, even their pets, which were found being cared for by automated feeding systems. It was as if humanity had been lifted right out of the galaxy by some invisible force. Council. Investigator Zephyrin of the Aquatic Dolphins was the first official to recognize that something unprecedented was happening. Swimming in her mobile water tank aboard the research vessel Deep Current, she reviewed reports from 17 different human colonies. Her sonar-based senses, evolved from millions of years in Earth's oceans before her species reached the stars, had always made her sensitive to patterns that other investigators missed. "This is not random," she said to her assistant, a young Delphin named Coralfin. "Look at the timing." Every human facility went silent within the same 72-hour period. That level of coordination would require months of planning and communication. Networks we never detected. Coralfin's tentacles waved nervously in the water around them. But how could they move 15 billion people without anyone noticing? The energy signatures alone would be visible from halfway across the galaxy. Zephyrin had been wondering the same thing. Human transportation technology was adequate but unremarkable. Their ships were reliable workhorses that moved cargo and passengers efficiently but slowly. The idea that they could evacuate their entire species in 3 days seemed impossible with the technology the Council believed humanity possessed. When Zephyrin submitted her initial report to the Council, the response was exactly what she had expected. Chancellor Vexstar dismissed the entire situation as a temporary human tantrum. "They are trying to make themselves seem important," he announced to the assembled council members. "No doubt they expect us to beg them to return. When they realize that the galaxy functions perfectly well without them, they will come crawling back with apologies." Hierarch Quindle was slightly more concerned, but only because he was worried about the economic implications. "The humans are useful for certain types of labor," he admitted. "But there are other species who can fill those roles. Perhaps we should begin recruiting from the Verdant Union worlds." But as days turned into weeks, the absence of humanity began to create problems that none of the council members had anticipated. The first major crisis occurred in the Zalarian Mining Consortium, where automated systems that had been running smoothly for decades suddenly began experiencing critical failures. Massive drilling platforms that had operated flawlessly under human maintenance started breaking down in ways that Zilarian engineers could not understand or repair. The quantum communication network that connected major council worlds began experiencing strange delays and routing errors. Messages that should have taken seconds to transmit across galactic distances started taking hours or even days to reach their destinations. Trade negotiations ground to a halt as different species found themselves unable to communicate reliably with each other on the Thraxian agricultural world of Verdania Prime. The irrigation systems that fed billions of beings across the sector suddenly stopped working. The technology was human-designed and human-maintained, though the Thraxians had never bothered to learn how it actually functioned. When Thraxian engineers tried to fix the problems, they discovered that the human systems were far more sophisticated than anyone had realized. What had appeared to be simple water distribution networks were actually complex environmental management systems that monitored soil conditions, weather patterns, and crop genetics in real time. Captain Lisa Brooks stood on the bridge of the ship Liberty's Edge, watching the chaos unfold through long-range sensors. The vessel was one of humanity's most closely guarded secrets, built using technology that the Council had never suspected existed. Its hull was composed of materials that bent light and sensor waves around it, making it virtually invisible to conventional detection methods. "Status report," Lisa said to her communications officer, Lieutenant Susan Wright. "All evacuation ships have reached the staging area in the void between galaxies," Susan replied. "Admiral Davis reports that the main fleet is ready to begin the final jump sequence. Dr. Parker's calculations show that we can reach Andromeda Galaxy within 18 months using the new drive systems." Lisa nodded, though part of her felt sad about leaving the galaxy that had been humanity's home for thousands of years. They had tried so hard to find their place among the stars, to prove that they could be valuable partners in building a better future for all species. But the Council had never wanted partners. They had only wanted servants. "Any responses to our automated messages?" Lisa asked. "The Council has been trying to trace our transmission sources," Susan reported. "They still think we're hiding somewhere in Council space. Chancellor Vexstar has ordered a sector-by-sector search of every system where humans used to live." Through the ship's viewports, Lisa could see the rest of humanity's secret fleet. Hundreds of vessels stretched out into the dark space between galaxies, carrying the hopes and dreams of an entire species. These ships represented the culmination of decades of secret research and development. While the Council had dismissed humanity as primitive, human scientists had been working on technologies that surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ship's intercom crackled to life with Admiral Carl Davis's voice. "All ships prepare for final departure jump. In 60 seconds, we leave Council space forever." Lisa activated her own communicator and spoke to the thousands of humans aboard Liberty's Edge. "This is Captain Brooks. I know that many of you are feeling sad about leaving our homes behind. But remember that home isn't a place. Home is where we can be free to become everything we're capable of becoming. The Council wanted to keep us small, to keep us grateful for scraps from their table. Today we choose to be great." The countdown reached 0, and 15 billion humans disappeared from the galaxy in a flash of light that was visible only to their own sensors. Behind them, they left empty worlds, broken systems, and a council that was about to learn the true cost of their arrogance. The Zilarian mining executive Morthek had never experienced failure before in his 200-year career. His family had controlled the largest mining operations in Council space for 15 generations, extracting precious metals and rare crystals from the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. The Morthek Mining Consortium employed over 50 million beings across 300 worlds and generated enough wealth to fund entire star systems. But 6 months after humanity's disappearance, Morthek sat in his crystalline office overlooking the capital city of Zelaria Prime and watched his empire crumble in real time. The holographic displays that covered his walls showed red warning indicators from mining operations across his territory. Facility after facility reported the same Devastating news: critical system failures, production delays, and equipment breakdowns that his best engineers could not fix. How bad is it today? Morthake asked his chief operations manager, a nervous Zalarian named Kiktal, who had been delivering increasingly terrible reports for months. The Kepler mining station has gone completely offline, Kiktal replied, his four hands trembling as he consulted his datapad. That's our third major facility this week. The automated drilling systems that the humans installed 20 years ago have developed some kind of cascade failure. Our engineers can't figure out how to restart them. Morthak felt one of his stomach chambers clench with anxiety. The Kepler station alone produced 15% of the rare earth elements that powered Zalarian technology. Without it, they would have to buy materials from competitors at prices that would bankrupt even his vast corporation. What about the Titan 7 facility? Morthak asked, though he already suspected the answer. Still producing materials, but at only 30% capacity, Kiktal admitted. The processing systems keep shutting down randomly. Every time we think we've solved the problem, something else breaks. It's like the entire facility was designed to fall apart without human technicians to maintain it. The truth was even worse than Kiktal dared to say out loud. Morthak's engineers had been studying the human-built systems for months, trying to understand why they were failing. What they had discovered was both humbling and terrifying. The humans had not simply built mining equipment. They had created integrated systems that monitored geological conditions, predicted equipment failures, and automatically adjusted operations to maximize efficiency and safety. The Zalarians had always assumed that human technology was primitive because it looked simple on the surface. Human machines were built with clean lines and basic interfaces that anyone could operate. But beneath that simplicity lay layers of sophistication that Zalarian science was only beginning to comprehend. The humans had built their systems to be user-friendly while hiding incredible complexity in the background processes. On the other side of the galaxy, the Thraxian hierarchy faced an even more immediate crisis. The agricultural worlds that fed 40 billion Thraxians across 12 star systems were experiencing crop failures on a scale that threatened mass starvation. Hierarch Quindle coiled his serpentine form around his command throne and listened to reports from his agricultural ministers with growing dread. The irrigation networks on Verdania Prime have completely failed, reported Minister Sothek, his scales pale with fear. Without proper water distribution, we will lose this season's harvest entirely. That represents food for 8 billion citizens. What about the backup systems? Quindle hissed, his forked tongue tasting the fear scent that filled the chamber. The backup systems were also human-designed, Sothek admitted. We are discovering that what we thought were simple water pumps were actually sophisticated environmental management networks. They monitored soil chemistry, adjusted nutrient levels, and even controlled local weather patterns to optimize crop growth. Our engineers have no idea how to replicate these functions. The Thraxians had made the same mistake as the Zalarians. They had seen human technology working flawlessly for decades and assumed it was primitive because it seemed so simple to operate. Human farmers had worked alongside Thraxian agricultural specialists, always willing to explain basic operations but never volunteering information about the deeper systems that made everything possible. Now the Thraxians were learning that human agricultural technology was centuries ahead of their own understanding. The humans had not just grown food. They had created artificial ecosystems that could turn barren worlds into gardens. They had developed crops that could thrive in conditions that would kill native plants. They had built weather control systems that could bring rain to deserts and prevent floods in wetlands. But the most shocking discovery came from the Council's own facilities on Kepler. Prime Intelligence Officer Krianol of the Insectoid Hive had been assigned to investigate humanity's disappearance, but instead found herself uncovering the extent of human integration into galactic civilization itself. The quantum communication network is failing, she reported to an emergency session of the Council leadership. Her compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights as she clicked and buzzed her findings. We always believed it was built by the crystalline, collective 50 years ago? But our investigation shows that humans redesigned the entire system 20 years ago to improve efficiency. Chancellor Vextar leaned forward in his chair, his blue skin taking on a sickly pale color. That's impossible. The communication network is the backbone of our entire civilization. If humans controlled it, they would have had access to every message, every secret, every piece of classified information in council space. Exactly, Creonal clicked grimly. But there's no evidence that they ever used this access inappropriately. In fact, our analysis suggests that they used their control of the network to improve security and prevent unauthorized access by hostile forces. They were protecting our communications better than we were protecting them ourselves. The implications were staggering. For 20 years, humanity had possessed the ability to spy on every council species, to manipulate their communications, or even to shut down their networks entirely. But they had never used this power for anything except maintaining and improving the systems they had been asked to work on far away in the void between galaxies. Admiral Carl Davis stood on the bridge of his flagship New Horizon and reviewed reports from his exploration teams. Major Tom Phillips had returned from a scouting mission to the Andromeda Galaxy with news that exceeded humanity's most optimistic projections. We've identified 14 star systems perfect for colonization, Tom reported, his excitement visible despite his military training. 3 of them have planets that are almost identical to Earth in terms of atmosphere and gravity. Captain Helen Burke's geological team says the mineral resources are beyond anything we had access to in council space. Admiral Davis nodded, though. His expression remained thoughtful. What about signs of intelligent life? That's the best part, Tom continued. We've detected what appears to be a peaceful spacefaring civilization in the Kepler 442 system. Captain Burke's first contact team has been monitoring their communications, and they seem genuinely curious about meeting other species. No signs of aggression or territorial behavior. On the planet that would soon be known as Haven, Governor. Steve Martinez oversaw the construction of humanity's first permanent settlement in their new galaxy. The city rising from the pristine landscape was unlike anything that had ever existed in council space. Architect Rachel Green had designed buildings that worked with the natural environment instead of dominating it. Engineer Danny Foster had developed power systems that drew energy from the planet's magnetic field without any environmental impact. How are the colonists adapting? Steve asked his deputy, Mayor Linda Ross. Better than we hoped, Linda replied. People are excited about the possibilities here. No council restrictions on our technology development, no limits on our expansion, no species telling us we're not qualified to make our own decisions. For the first time in 70 years, humanity can reach its full potential. Dr. Amy Parker worked in her new laboratory, a facility that dwarfed anything she had been allowed to build in council space. Her research team, including physicist Ben Carter and xenobiologist Kate Morgan, were making breakthrough discoveries almost daily. Without the Council's restrictions on human technology development, they were free to pursue research that had been forbidden for decades. The quantum field generators are working perfectly, Ben reported. We're achieving faster-than-light travel speeds that are 50% faster than anything the Council ever developed. At this rate, we'll be able to explore the entire Andromeda galaxy within a century. Kate looked up from her biological samples with amazement. The life forms in this galaxy are incredible. I've identified 17 new categories of organisms that could revolutionize our understanding of evolution and adaptation. And the best part is, we don't have to ask anyone's permission to study them. 2 years had passed since humanity vanished from the galaxy, and Council historian Velmara finally received permission to lead an archaeological expedition to the abandoned human research facility on Proxima Station, the Crystalline Collective. Bing had spent her entire career studying the rise and fall of galactic civilizations, but she had never investigated a species that had simply chosen to leave. While they were still alive and thriving, the research station orbited a red dwarf star in what had once been considered a backwater system. Humans had requested permission to build there 40 years ago, claiming they wanted to study stellar radiation effects on crystalline growth. The Council had approved the request without much thought, assuming that human research would produce nothing of significant value. When Velmara and her team docked with the station, they found it in perfect condition. The artificial gravity worked flawlessly. The air recycling systems hummed with quiet efficiency, and the lights responded to their presence with soft illumination that was easy on their various types of eyes. Everything was clean, organized, and carefully maintained, as if the human researchers had expected to return at any moment. "The main laboratory is this way," said her assistant, a young aquatic delphin named HFY, who floated in his portable water tank. According to the station schematics, Dr. Amy Parker's quantum physics lab takes up the entire 7th level. When they entered the laboratory, Velmara felt her crystalline structure vibrate with shock. The room was filled with equipment that she did not recognize, devices that seemed to bend space around them in ways that should have been impossible. Mathematical equations covered every wall, written in the flowing script that humans used for their most advanced calculations. "What is this?" HFY asked, pointing one of his tentacles at a device that seemed to be folding space into origami patterns. Velmara approached the machine carefully, her geological senses picking up energy readings that made no sense according to everything she knew about physics. If these readings are accurate, this device is manipulating the fundamental structure of space-time itself. The energy requirements alone should be impossible to achieve with any known technology. But as they explored deeper into the laboratory, they found evidence of technologies that surpassed even their wildest imagination. In one room, they discovered a device that appeared to be communicating with itself across different points in time. In another, they found experimental faster-than-light engines that could theoretically cross galactic distances in weeks rather than months. The most shocking discovery came when HFY accessed Dr. Parker's personal research files. The computer system required no passwords or security clearances. It simply responded to their request for information with the same helpful efficiency that had characterized every human interaction with the Council. "Listen to this," HFY said, his sonar-based voice trembling with excitement as he read from the files. Dr. Parker's research notes from 15 years ago describe successful experiments in temporal manipulation, matter conversion, and something called quantum consciousness transfer. According to her calculations, these technologies were perfected over a decade ago. Velmara felt her crystalline body darken with realization. If humans had these capabilities 15 years ago, why did they never share them with the Council? Why did they continue to work in mining and agriculture and basic engineering when they could have been leading galactic scientific advancement? The answer came from Dr. Parker's personal diary, which they found stored in a simple data crystal on her desk. The entries painted a picture of frustration and disappointment that made Velmara's structure ache with sympathy. Another Council. Science Review today. One entry read, "I presented our preliminary findings on quantum field manipulation to the review board." Hierarch Quindle dismissed the entire presentation as amusing theoretical speculation from an enthusiastic but inexperienced species. Chancellor Vextar suggested that humans should focus on practical applications rather than wasting time on abstract physics. They have no idea that we solved their transportation efficiency problems 3 years ago, or that we could revolutionize their energy production tomorrow if they would just listen. Another entry, dated just 6 months before humanity's departure, revealed the depth of human disappointment with the Council's attitude. "We tried again today to share our breakthrough in stellar engineering with the Zolarian Academy of Sciences. They thanked us politely and filed our research in their interesting but impractical archives. Meanwhile, their own scientists continue to struggle with problems we solved years ago. We want to help, but they refuse to believe we have anything valuable to offer." But the most devastating entry came from Dr. Parker's final research notes, written just days before the evacuation. "Julie and I have completed the calculations for Project New Horizon. We can move our entire civilization to Andromeda Galaxy using the quantum tunnel generators. The irony is not lost on me that we are using technology the Council believes impossible to escape from people who think we are primitives. Perhaps in our new home we will find species who value cooperation over condescension. HFY's tentacles drooped with sadness as he finished reading. They had all of this incredible technology, and they were still willing to share it with us. They just wanted to be treated as equals. In the Andromeda Galaxy, humanity's new civilization was flourishing beyond all expectations. President Nick Thompson stood on the observation deck of New Geneva City, watching as the third major settlement took shape on the horizon. The city was a marvel of human engineering and alien cooperation, built in partnership with the Etherian people who had welcomed humanity as friends rather than servants. The Etherians were beings of pure energy who could take physical form when needed. They had been exploring their galaxy alone for thousands of years, hoping to find other intelligent species to share the wonders of the universe with. When humanity arrived, the Etherians had greeted them with joy rather than suspicion. The cultural exchange program is exceeding all expectations, reported Chief Diplomat Elena Rodriguez during the daily briefing. The Etherians are teaching us energy manipulation techniques that could revolutionize our technology, while our engineers are helping them build physical structures they never thought possible. It's true cooperation between equals. President Thompson nodded as he watched Etherian energy forms dancing through the air above the city, playing games with human children who laughed with delight at their new friends. Any word from our deep space exploration teams? Captain Nancy Bell's expedition has made contact with 2 more species in the outer systems, Elena continued. The silicon-based constructors are master builders who want to learn about our architectural techniques. The Luminaria living starlight who are fascinated by our quantum research. Both species are interested in joining our confederation as equal partners. Admiral Lisa Brooks, now the head of interstellar defense for the Human Confederation, reviewed reports from the border monitoring stations. No signs of pursuit from Council space, she reported. Our long-range sensors show that the galactic economy has collapsed completely. Multiple star systems are now in open warfare over the remaining resources. Dr. Amy Parker worked in her new laboratory, a facility that was 10 times larger than anything she had been allowed to build in Council space. Her research team now included Etherian energy scientists and constructor, quantum engineers who brought perspectives that human science had never considered. We've achieved faster than light speeds that are 3 times faster than our previous records, reported physicist Ben Carter. The Etherian energy folding techniques combined with our quantum tunnel technology are producing results we never thought possible. Xenobiologist Kate Morgan looked up from her latest discovery with excitement. The biodiversity in this galaxy is incredible. I've cataloged over 200 new life forms in just the past month. The constructors have shown me living crystal formations that could teach us new ways to store and process information. Engineer Paul Anderson and his international team had been working with constructor master builders to design cities that could adapt to any environment. We're not just building human settlements anymore, he explained to President Thompson during a construction review. We're creating communities where multiple species can live and work together as true partners. No one species dominates the others. Explorer Captain Nancy Bell transmitted regular reports from her deep space missions, describing wonders that surpassed anything in Council space. The resource-rich systems we've discovered could support billions of beings for thousands of years, she reported. And the best part is, there are no artificial restrictions on who can access them or how they can be used. Every species in our confederation shares equally in the benefits. Back in Council space, the once mighty galactic government was fragmenting into smaller and smaller pieces. Chancellor Vextar had been removed from power by his own people, who blamed him for the loss of humanity and the economic collapse that followed. Hierarch Quindle controlled only a fraction of his former territorious Thraxian worlds, declared independence rather than starve under his failed leadership. 5 years after humanity vanished from the galaxy, former Chancellor Vextar sat in exile on a barren moon at the edge of Solarian space. The once mighty leader who had commanded the respect of billions now lived in a simple shelter, forgotten by the civilization he had helped destroy. His blue skin had faded to a pale gray, and his forearms trembled with the weakness that came from malnutrition and despair. The moon had no atmosphere, no resources, and no value to anyone. It was the perfect place for a disgraced politician to spend his final years contemplating the magnitude of his failures. Through the transparent walls of his shelter, Vextar could see the wreckage of a Zolarian transport ship that had crashed months ago. No one had come to rescue the crew or salvage the vessel. The Zolarian Empire no longer had the resources to waste on rescue missions to worthless moons. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission, the first communication Vextar had received in over a year. The holographic projector displayed the image of Equaline, one of the few moderate council members who had survived the collapse of galactic civilization. The aquatic dolphin looked older and more tired than Vextar remembered, her usually bright coloration dulled by stress and sorrow. "Vextar," she said, her voice carrying across the void between their worlds. "I know we have had our differences, but I need to speak with someone who understands what we lost." Vextar activated his own transmitter, though he felt ashamed to let anyone see what he had become. "Aqualin, I'm surprised anyone remembers that I still exist. The Delphin archives have been calculating the economic damage from humanity's departure," she continued. "The numbers are worse than we feared. Galactic trade has decreased by 87%. Over 200 star systems have reverted to pre-space flight technology levels. Billions of beings have died from starvation, disease, and warfare." Vextar closed his 4 eyes, unable to bear the weight of those numbers. "How many species have gone extinct?" 17 so far, Aquelin replied, her sonar-based voice heavy with grief. "The crystalline collective has shattered into fragments. The insectoid hive has split into 3 warring factions. Even my own people have retreated to the deepest oceans, abandoning space travel entirely." The conversation continued for hours, as 2 broken leaders tried to understand how their galaxy had fallen so far so quickly. They talked about the warning signs they had ignored, the human contributions they had dismissed, and the arrogance that had blinded them to reality until it was too late. "Do you remember Human Ambassador Morrison's final speech?" Aquilin asked as their discussion drew to a close. "Every word," Vextar admitted. "He offered us partnership, cooperation, and access to technologies that could have advanced our civilization by centuries, and we laughed at him." "The humans knew this would happen," Aquilin said with quiet certainty. "They understood our civilization better than we understood it ourselves. They could see that we were dependent on their hidden contributions, but they tried to save us anyway by offering partnership instead of dependence." Vextar felt one of his stomach chambers contract with pain as he remembered the contempt he had shown toward humanity's final offer. "We destroyed ourselves through our own pride. The humans did not abandon us. We drove them away." Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place among the few leaders who remained in power. The great council chambers on Kepler Prime stood empty, their crystalline walls cracked and dark. The planet itself had been abandoned after the life support systems failed and no one could repair them. The technology that had once seemed so simple and reliable had revealed itself to be incredibly sophisticated when the humans who maintained it disappeared. The central galactic banking system had collapsed completely when investigators discovered that every major financial transaction in the past 20 years had been processed through human-designed algorithms. The humans had not just been workers in the galactic economy. They had been the invisible architects who made the entire system function. Without human logistics networks, trade between star systems became impossible. Ships that had relied on human-built navigation systems found themselves lost in space. Communication networks that had connected the galaxy for generations fell silent as the quantum routers designed by human engineers failed one by one. The Thraxian hierarchy had split into dozens of smaller kingdoms as worlds that could no longer feed themselves declared independence from the central government. Hierarch Quindle controlled only his home system now, and even that was threatened by food riots and civil unrest. The agricultural worlds that had once fed billions were returning to wilderness as the sophisticated irrigation and climate control systems broke down beyond repair. In the Andromeda Galaxy, humanity's confederation continued to grow and prosper. The city of New Geneva had expanded into a sprawling metropolis that housed 3 million beings from 12 different species. Human architects worked alongside Etherian energy shapers and constructor master builders to create living spaces that adapted to the needs of every inhabitant. President Nick Thompson stood in the Confederation Assembly Hall, addressing representatives from all the member species. The hall itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering with atmospheric zones that allowed water-breathing delphins to sit next to energy-based luminari and crystalline builders. Every species had contributed to the design, and every species felt welcome in the space they had created together. 5 years ago, humanity left our birth galaxy in search of partners who would treat us as equals, Thompson said to the assembled delegates. Today, we celebrate the success of that decision. Our confederation has achieved technological advances that none of our species could have accomplished alone. We have explored new worlds, made incredible discoveries, and built a civilization based on mutual respect and cooperation. The Etherian delegate, a being of swirling energy who had taken the name Aurora, responded with patterns of light that conveyed joy and gratitude. The humans brought us gifts we never expected, Aurora said through the translation system that human engineers had built to facilitate communication between energy beings and physical species. Not just technology, but new ways of thinking about cooperation and growth. Chief Diplomat Elena Rodriguez reported on the Confederation's latest expansion. 3 more species have requested membership in our alliance, she announced. The Void Swimmers from the Galactic Edge, the Crystal, Singers from the Binary Star Systems, and the Tree Shepherds from the Forest Worlds. Each brings unique capabilities that will benefit all our member species. Admiral Lisa Brooks had transformed from a simple ship captain into the architect of the most advanced space fleet in known existence. Her ships were built using technologies from 6 different species, creating vessels that could travel faster, survive longer, and explore deeper than anything that had ever existed in Council space. Our exploration fleets have mapped 40% of the Andromeda Galaxy, Brooks reported to the Assembly. We have discovered resource-rich systems that could support our civilization for millions of years. More importantly, we have found evidence of ancient civilizations that chose cooperation over conquest, species that built wonders through partnership rather than domination. Dr. Amy Parker's research had advanced beyond anything she had dreamed possible in Council space. Working with alien scientists who treated her as a respected colleague rather than a primitive curiosity, she had made breakthrough discoveries in quantum physics, temporal mechanics, and consciousness transfer technology. The Luminari have taught us that energy and matter are far more flexible than we ever imagined, she explained to a gathering of Confederation scientists. The constructors have shown us how to build structures that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Etherians have revealed the quantum nature of consciousness itself. Together, we are unlocking secrets of the universe that no single species could have discovered alone. Engineer Paul Anderson supervised the construction of humanity's most ambitious project yet, a space habitat that could house 50 million beings from 20 different species. The habitat was designed to be completely self-sufficient, capable of traveling between galaxies while providing everything its inhabitants needed to thrive. We are not just building homes, Paul explained to his diverse construction crew. We are creating mobile civilizations that can explore the universe while carrying our cultures and values with us. No species will ever again have to choose between their home and their freedom. Back in the dying galaxy they had left behind, a few survivors struggled to rebuild from the wreckage of their former civilization. But without the human expertise that had held everything together, progress was slow and often reversed by new failures and conflicts. The great irony was that humanity had left behind detailed maintenance manuals and repair instructions for every system they had built. But the pride that had driven humans away in the first place now prevented the remaining species from admitting they needed help from beings they had considered inferior. 10 years had passed since humanity disappeared from the galaxy, and Captain Zoran of the last functioning Zellarian starship prepared for what might be the final mission of his dying civilization. The vessel Final Hope was a patchwork of salvaged parts held together by desperation and the fading skills of engineers who had never learned to truly understand the technology they depended on. Zio, our single quotes, and stood on the bridge, looking at a crew that represented the best survivors from across the former council space. His navigator was Hexara, a brilliant crystalline scientist whose people had once sparkled like living diamonds but now appeared dim and fractured. His communications officer was the aquatic Delphin Sonarkill, whose portable water tank showed stress cracks from years of poor maintenance. His engineer was Thermalex from the Silicon Collective, whose rocky form bore scars from countless desperate repair attempts on failing systems. "Are you certain about these quantum signatures?" Zoran asked Hexara, though he already knew the answer. They had spent 3 years developing the technology needed to trace humanity's departure route, using fragments of human research that they had finally swallowed their pride enough to study. "The energy patterns are unmistakable," Hexara replied, her crystalline voice carrying harmonics of exhaustion and faint hope. "The humans use some form of intergalactic quantum tunneling to reach Andromeda Galaxy. If our calculations are correct, we can follow the same route using the modified drive systems. The journey to Andromeda would take everything they had left." The Final Hope carried representatives from every surviving council species, along with what remained of their accumulated knowledge and culture. It was not a rescue mission or a military expedition. It was a desperate pilgrimage by the survivors of a civilization that had destroyed itself through arrogance and pride. "All stations report ready for quantum tunnel activation," announced Sonarkill, her sonar-based voice trembling with the strain of operating equipment she barely understood. "This will drain our power systems completely. If the humans refuse to help us, we will not have enough energy to return home." Zoran nodded grimly. There was no home to return to anyway. The worlds they had left behind were dying or already dead, consumed by wars over resources that no longer existed or poisoned by industrial accidents that no one knew how to clean up. This mission was their last hope for survival as species and as individuals. The quantum tunnel activated with a flash of light that tore through the fabric of space itself. For a moment that lasted forever, the crew of Final Hope existed between galaxies, surrounded by the raw energy of creation and destruction. Then they emerged into Andromeda space, their ship badly damaged but intact enough to continue. What they found waiting for them defied every expectation they had carried from their dying galaxy. The star systems around them blazed with artificial lights that spoke of massive civilizations and incredible prosperity. Space stations the size of moons orbited worlds that had been terraformed into gardens. Ships moved between planets with technology that made their own vessel look like a primitive toy. "Incoming transmission," Sonarkill announced, her voice filled with wonder. "Multiple sources. They are welcoming us to Andromeda space and offering assistance." The transmission came from a human vessel, but Captain Zoran could hear other voices in the background speaking languages he did not recognize. When the communication screen activated, he saw the bridge of a ship that looked like it had been built by artists rather than engineers. Elegant curves and flowing lines created spaces that seemed to invite cooperation rather than demand hierarchy. "This is Captain Nancy Bell of the Confederation vessel Harmony's Dream," said the human officer on the screen. Her uniform bore symbols that represented multiple species working together, and her crew included beings that Zoran had never seen before. "We have been expecting you. Please allow us to escort you to New Geneva Station where you can receive medical attention and speak with our diplomatic corps." The journey to New Geneva took 2 days, and every hour revealed new wonders that made the council delegation realize how completely they had underestimated humanity's potential. They passed cities that floated in space like crystalline flowers, each one home to millions of beings from dozens of different species. They saw ships that seemed to swim through space like living creatures, built using technologies that blended science and art into something beyond either. The New Geneva Station was a structure that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. It stretched across hundreds of kilometers, with sections designed to accommodate every type of life that the Confederation had encountered. Water-filled areas for aquatic species connected to energy matrix zones for beings of pure thought, while atmospheric domes provided homes for countless variations of physical life forms. President Nick Thompson met them in a reception hall that showcased the best of every member species' artistic traditions. The room itself was a collaboration between human architects, Etherian energy shapers, constructor master builders, and a dozen other species that the Council delegation had never heard of. The effect was breathtakingly beautiful and completely functional at the same time. "Welcome to the Andromeda Confederation," President Thompson said as the Council delegation entered the hall. His words were translated instantly into every language and communication method used by the visitors, a feat of technology that the old Council had never achieved despite centuries of trying. With Thompson stood the leaders of humanity's new golden age. Admiral Lisa Brooks wore the insignia of the Confederation Defense Force, but her uniform also bore symbols of the peaceful exploration missions that had become humanity's greatest achievement. Dr. Amy Parker had aged gracefully, her hair now silver, but her eyes still bright with the joy of scientific discovery in an environment where her research was valued and supported. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stepped forward to address the delegation directly. "We know why you have come," she said with the diplomatic grace that had helped humanity build their new alliance. "Your galaxy is dying, and you hope that we might return to help you rebuild what was lost." Captain Zoran found himself struggling to speak. The reception hall around him represented everything the Council could have achieved if they had chosen cooperation over dominance. The beings he saw working together as equals could have been his own people if pride had not blinded them to possibility. "We offer you everything we have left," Zoran finally said. "Complete control of our remaining resources, leadership of what survives of our civilization, access to all our historical knowledge and cultural treasures. All we ask is that you help us save our worlds before they die completely." The silence that followed was not cruel or dismissive. It was the quiet of beings who understood the magnitude of what was being offered and the tragedy that had made such an offer necessary. President Thompson exchanged glances with his advisors before responding with words that carried both dignity and finality. 10 years ago, we came to your council as partners," Thompson said gently. "We offered friendship, cooperation, and the sharing of knowledge between equals. You responded with laughter and contempt. You saw us as servants rather than allies, as primitives rather than contributors to galactic civilization." Dr. Parker stepped forward, her voice carrying the memory of decades spent trying to help people who refused to see her value. "We did not leave your galaxy out of anger or revenge. We left because we realized that we could find better partners elsewhere, beings who would treat us with the respect that all intelligent species deserve. And we did find those partners," Admiral Brooks added, gesturing to the diverse group of beings who filled the reception hall. "The Etherians welcomed us as friends before they knew anything about our technology. The constructors offered to share their knowledge because they believed that cooperation makes everyone stronger. The Luminari included us in their research because they understood that different perspectives lead to better discoveries." Ambassador Rodriguez delivered the final words with the same dignity that Ambassador Morrison had shown in his final speech to the Council 10 years before. "You offer us control of your civilization, but we do not want to control anyone. You offer us your resources, but we have found wealth beyond imagination through cooperation rather than exploitation. You offer us your knowledge, but we have learned that forced partnerships based on desperation create resentment rather than friendship." The Council delegation stood in stunned silence as the reality of their situation became clear. They had traveled across the void between galaxies, offering humanity everything they possessed, only to discover that humanity had already built something far better without them. However, President Thompson continued, we are not the same beings. Who left your galaxy 10 years ago? We have learned from our new partners that compassion and cooperation extend even to those who once rejected us. We cannot return to rebuild your civilization, but we can offer you something else. We invite you to join us here, Dr. Parker said. Not as rulers or subjects, but as equal partners in building something better. Your surviving populations are welcome in our space if they are willing to embrace the principles of equality and cooperation that make our confederation possible.